Savings can save you during an emergency, but they can also give you freedom in the good times. Therefore, everyone wants to save, but find it hard to do so consistently. And especially in our 20s, I think it's so important to learn how to save and how to manage our money to get it right since the beginning and avoid mistakes in the future when we have more at stake. In this video, I'm going to share the tips that have allowed me to save during this past year at my first full-time job. And to give you a bit of context, I'm Raquel and I'm doing this because I have a finance degree and I'm passionate about personal finances and investing, and I'm here to help others through my knowledge and experience. The first tip is to find your own balance. The thing is, money is supposed to be a synonym of freedom. But at least in my case, it wasn't like that for a long time because growing up, we didn't have much money at home. And for me, it was just like this source of stress, which led me to see savings as a way of punishment. And especially when we're in our 20s, we are in this constant argument between living in the moment and spending money now, or being responsible and saving for our future. So the first step for me is finding your own balance and what works for you, and just think that it's not all or nothing. Like for me, it's you can live at the moment and at the same time building my own future. The second step is to have a separate bank account. There are multiple types of bank accounts. Everyone knows the checking account, which is the one where you receive your income every month, but there are other types of bank accounts like the savings accounts. This tip was essential in my journey and has helped me a lot. So these savings accounts have two main advantages. The first one is that they pay you interest on your money. So they're just like checking accounts, they're as safe and you can withdraw your money at any time, but the bank will pay you a small percentage of interest on your money. This interest can range and they're not very high, but I guess it's better than nothing. That's what you get on your checking account. And the second advantage is that it's separate from your checking account. So when I started saving, I left all of my money in my checking account and I ended up spending it. So what I'm saying is to have two different accounts. In your checking account, only leave the money that you want to spend and transfer to your savings account all the money that you want to save. In this way, you don't perceive your savings as money that's there available for you to spend it at any time. It's just less accessible and I think it's harder for you to end up spending it. But if you live in Europe like me, not all the banks have these types of accounts. That's why I love digital banks. I personally use Revolut. There are other banks that are pretty similar to them, but they pay you interest daily, which means that whenever I open my bank account, I can see, even if it's 10 cents a day, but they end up summing up. And so if I look at what I've earned for the past few months, I can see there are maybe like 20 or 30 euros. And I know it's just a ridiculous amount of money, but for me, it's a small reward that keeps me motivated in the long term. The third tip is to have purpose-driven savings. This is a very simple step, but it has really helped me. So don't just save for the sake of saving. So for your first savings account, maybe you want just to save up for emergencies, so you can call it emergencies. But if your goal is, I don't know, to move out or to buy a car or to go on a trip, name your savings account like that. For example, Revolut lets you have different savings accounts and name each one as you want. So I have one that's called Thailand and it even has Thailand's flag on it too. And again, I know this sounds silly, but it keeps you motivated. And it kind of reminds you constantly, every time that you look at it, why you're saving. And that saving now will be worth it in the future, when you go on this trip or when you buy this car or whatever. Saving before spending, also known as paying yourself first in the world of personal finance, it's something that everyone recommends and I personally love it. But there are two ways to do it. At the beginning of every month, when you get your salary, you can either automate transfers from your checking account to your savings account with the same quantity every month. So you don't have to do the effort, nor the choice, and therefore increasing the chances of you saving. But for me, this doesn't really work because I consider myself a very disciplined person when it comes to money. So I know I'm gonna end up saving at the beginning of every month, but depending on the month, I can save more or less. So what I like is to sit down, make a budget at the beginning of every month to see how much income I have, how many expenses I have, and to max out my savings. Most months I end up saving the same amount, but if there is one month in which I can save more, I want to do it manually and I want to kind of see that reward myself be aware of how much I'm saving, and it just helps me to feel proud of myself. But anyway, the key takeaway here is that you should save before spending, not saving what's left after spending. So again, at the beginning of every month, either automatically or manually, transfer your savings from your checking to your savings account. And I assure you, this will help you a lot in being consistent with your savings. Tip number 5, track, know yourself, and prioritize. I'm a huge advocate of tracking your own money. So I have a budget template I will link down below. It's a free Google Sheets template in which you can make your budget at the beginning of every month and then tracking every single transfer that goes in and out of your checking account. Like this, you will know exactly how much you earn and how much you spend, where do you spend it. The goal here is to get to know yourself. So for example, in my first internship, I thought I was being very responsible because I was saving a lot and not spending a lot. But when I finished the internship, I didn't really have a lot of money and I truly didn't know where it has all gone. So I didn't know where was I splurging and what could I do to get better. But now I know where I spend most of my money and I think about if that category makes me happy or not. So for example, I love food and I love to travel. So I want to splurge on those things, but at the same time, again, saving for my future. So I splurge on going out on restaurants or going on a trip. But then I cut back on other categories, like for example, for me, it's clothes. Clothes are not very important, so I'm not gonna be spending a lot of money there. The goal here is to learn what makes you happy, prioritize that, and cut back on other things that don't. We're already on the last tip. I've decided to call it "You Can't Afford That." There's a lot of people that make the mistake of thinking that if they can pay for something, they can afford it. But it's not like that, and let me explain. After being working full-time for some months, now I could afford a Chanel bag or whatever luxury stuff that's trendy right now. But the truth is that I can't afford it, because if I buy that, then I won't have money for my travels, I won't have money to go out on restaurants, and don't get me started with your needs like your rent, your groceries, your bills, and so on. So please remember that the fact that you can pay for something doesn't mean that you can afford it. If it doesn't fit into your budget, you can't afford it. To summarize everything, let me review all of the tips so you can take a screenshot and apply some of these to your money routine. So the first tip is finding your own balance between savings and expenses. Don't forget to spoil yourself while at the same time saving for your future. The second tip is having separate bank accounts. If you don't have a savings account, just tap into Google savings accounts and your country, and I'm sure a lot of them will pop up. Just investigate a little bit so you can choose the best one for you. The third tip was to have purpose-driven savings. Remember to put a name on your savings and even little flags of the country that you're planning to travel to. The fourth tip is to save before spending and not saving just what's left. The fifth tip is to track, know yourself, and prioritize what makes you happy. And the sixth tip is you can't afford it if you can't fit it into your budget. If you've watched until now, thank you. I really hope it was useful, and if you implement any of these tips into your money routine, tell me in the comments. Share this video with a friend if it was useful, and don't forget to subscribe.